So what are 5 surprising things about Raffles that you possibly think that people should know but don't know about him?
He was... I've been critical of Raffles in some of my writings. I mean, there are points you can make in criticism. But I think, I suppose it's more tolerance comes with age. But I think he's a much greater man than people think he was. And I think his reputation will continue to grow. It's unfortunate that there's a lot of criticism being written about him today, and one doesn't mind criticism if it's well informed. But there's so much ill-informed criticism of Raffles that I find, intolerable. But he was a great man. There's no question. He's a good man. He had weaknesses, obvious weaknesses. I mean, he is inclined to publicise his activities, which today we would think is bad. But writing. What?
It's like blogging.
I don't know about that, but he wanted to keep his name forward in London, and
so
he
media hall.
Yes, I suppose there are perhaps attitudes today that we wouldn't. But you must remember that Raffles was a self-made man. I mean, he came from a relatively humble position. They're not totally so. I mean, his father being a sea captain is certainly not the bottom of the social scale by any means. But he had a hard upbringing because his father, at the end of his life, obviously couldn't provide for his family and had to send Raffles out to provide for the family in some way. And Raffles always was always sad about having to go out to work, being taken away from school at the age of 14 and put in the offices of the East India Company. But recently there's a lady commentator proving that he didn't come from the hardest up of London society. Perfectly true. I mean, he wasn't sent up chimneys to clean chimneys, the chimney sweeps were. But the family lost money at a critical point, and he suffered as a consequence of his education. Suffered. The curious thing about that is that Raffles always appreciated his own scholastic and educational achievements, and yet people who had talked about him, Lord Minto said he was a very clever man. And Lord Minto, Governor-General, is a good judge. I mean, Minto was one of the great orators in the trial of Warren Hastings, and even outperformed Edmund Burke in some of the speeches. He was a friend of the literati of the Scottish Enlightenment, and he was a member of course, the Ministry of All the Talents in 1806 in England. So Minto had a good base for judging men, and when he says Raffles was a clever man, and Raffles was only 30 at this time, you can take my word for it that Raffles was a clever man.
What happened to his first wife?
His first wife, she died in Java in 1814.
Because?
Because she had continual problems of health when she was living in Penang. She had, of course, illegitimate child, which tells about describes in the book, and maybe something occurred at that time in the birth of that child that affected her health. She clearly couldn't have had any other children else. I'm sure Raffles would have had children by her. And of course,
that Raffles was upset that he sort of had an
no, there's no evidence of that at all. No.
What happened to the child?
Oh, well, she, again, the story is narrated in the book, and so she had a most interesting history, and of course inherited a substantial Scottish estate in Scotland, in the Highlands of Scotland, and that family became very, very prominent in Scottish history, so it's very strange, the twists of fortune. And her father was a sea captain, commander of one of the East India Company ships, and he had this affair with Olivia Mariamne when she was much younger. And the daughter, yes, was brought up on the assumption that she would marry, but that she wouldn't inherit in any way. But the commander of the ship Dempster, his son died, and so the illegitimate child succeeded to the estates, and they were substantial. And that is fate.
That is fate. Well, thank you very much for your time, Dr. Bastin. It was very nice meeting you.
Indeed.
And it was very nice having the tour.
Well, thank
so
you.
much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Goodbye.